Hello, brothers and sisters. My name is Daniel, aka the Dan2K19, coming at you with another Bible study. We are going to continue into the book of Matthew, chapter 2. We're going to change things up. I'm going to do a reading of chapter 2, and then we're going to do a deep dive Bible study. I'm taking this from the Haley's Handbook, which my pastor bought for me. Thank you, Pastor John. I appreciate it. I took the liberty of writing down the points made in this book to kind of take a deep dive into what we're going to read here in chapter 2. So let us begin in a word of prayer. Bow your heads and close your eyes. Dear Lord, we just come before you and we pray that we receive this word, Father God. Lord, I pray that the viewer and I come together, Father God, before you, and we just eat of your word, Father God, Lord, that you will work through this ministry, Father God, of being on YouTube. I thank you and I praise you, Lord. May you continue to bless me and bless those around me and those viewing this video. Lord, have your way in our lives and may people know you, the true you. Use me to show people who you are. Thank you and I praise you in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so let's get into this. Matthew chapter 2, Wise Men from the East. Now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east, and have come to worship him. When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and the scribes of the people together, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. So they said to him, In Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not the least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you shall come a ruler, who will shepherd my people Israel. Then Herod, when he had secretly called the wise men, determined from them what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, Go and search carefully for the young child, and when you have found him, bring back word to me, that I may come and worship him also. When they heard the king, they departed, and behold, the star which they had seen in the east went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceedingly great joy. And when they had come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented gifts to him, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Then being divinely warned in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed for their own country another way. The flight into Egypt. Now when they had departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise, take the young child and his mother, flee to Egypt, and stay there until I bring you word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. When he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night, and departed for Egypt, and was there until the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the Lord through the prophet, saying, Out of Egypt I called my son. Massacre of the innocents. Then Herod, when he saw that he was deceived by the wise men, was exceedingly angry, and he sent forth and put to death all the male children who were in Bethlehem and in all its districts, from 2 years old and under, according to the time which had determined from the wise men. Then was fulfilled what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet, saying, A voice was heard in Ramah, lamentation, weeping, and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, refusing to be comforted, because they are no more. The home in Nazareth. Now when Herod was dead, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, saying, Arise, take the young child and his mother, and go to the land of Israel, for those who sought the young child's life are dead. Then he arose, took the young child and his mother, and came into the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was reigning over Judea instead of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. And being warned by God in a dream, he turned aside into the region of Galilee. And he came and dwelt in a city called Nazareth, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophets, he shall be called a Nazarene. Amen. That is awesome, church. That is a great story in the beginning of the Gospels of the backstory of Jesus and his birth and the troubles that his family had to go through, that even he had to go through as a child, having to run away from King Herod because he wanted to kill him. And it makes you think from chapter 1 that we read about Jesus being in a lineage of kings. And if you think about it, kings don't want to have competition in their kingdom, and Herod wanted to destroy Jesus. But we know that God is in control when reading in this passage in this scripture, Matthew chapter 2, that God is in full control and has full control over our lives, and especially his son's life. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and move over to the Bible study that I have over here on the right. Now, keep in mind that this is a Bible study that we're doing together. I'm not teaching you. We're coming together as non-believers, believers, whatever you are in your faith or you're standing with God. We're just coming to try to read the word and understand it together. So let's begin. This is talking about Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 through 12. The visit of the wise men is what we read in verses 1 through 12. This must have occurred in the period when Jesus was between 40 days and 2 years old. And this right here in parentheses is giving us some examples. So I've also taken the liberty to get those prepared. So chapter 2, verse 16 of Matthew. Then Herod, when he saw that he was deceived by the wise men, was exceedingly angry, and he sent forth and put to death all the male children who were in Bethlehem and in all its districts, from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had determined from the wise men. So this basically tells us that Jesus was approximately 2 years old during this period when the wise men were visiting, and when they actually did visit him. And also there's a secondary example in Luke 2, verse 22 and 39. Now when the days of her purification according to the law of Moses were completed, they brought him to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord. So you can see that this is an example of what had happened before, if what I'm understanding correctly, the wise men came. So these things happened before Jesus was visited by these wise men. All right, moving back over to the Bible study section on the right-hand side here. It would have taken the Magi, or wise men, some time to get to Jerusalem after they first saw the star. And this is in verse 7, we see this example. Then Herod, when he had secretly called the wise men, determined from them what time the star appeared. All right, so although probably quite a bit less than 2 years. So it's determining that they probably got there a little bit less than 2 years. And it took some time before Herod realized that Magi weren't coming back. So Herod, in order to be sure, took the outside limit. We know that the child was no longer in the manger, as is sometimes pictured, but in the house. So it's pictured here in verse 11. And when they had come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented gifts to him, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. So in verse 11 of Matthew chapter 2, it says that they went into the house. But in Luke chapter 2, verse 6 through 7, it says, so it was that while they were there, the days were completed for her to be delivered. And she brought forth her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling cloths, and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn. So we have a picture of Jesus in the manger, but this is saying that they were in the house. Moving on, these wise men belonged to the learned class, those who were the advisors of the kings. They came from Babylon or the country beyond, the land where the human race had its origin, the land of Abraham, the land of the Jewish captivity, where many Jews still lived. They were perhaps familiar with the Jewish scriptures and knew of the expectation of a coming messianic king. It was the land of Daniel, and they may have known of Daniel's prophecies. So this passage right here is amazing because it shows that not only were Jews looking forward to the coming of the Messiah, but even Gentiles. And the word Gentile means non-Jewish. So these wise men were coming from the east, from Babylon or the country beyond, and were looking to see Jesus. These men had probably seen the prophecies from Daniel in the book of Daniel, which is in the Old Testament, where Daniel does prophesy about the coming Messiah, which is Jesus. But just to read that and to think that God has been in all of our lives all throughout all time since he created us. All right, let's move on to the next section. They were men of high standing, for they had access to Herod. We usually speak of the three wise men or magi, but scripture does not say how many there were. Probably more. They certainly would have traveled with an entourage of perhaps dozens, for it would not be safe for a small group to travel over thousands of miles over terrain infested with bandits. Their arrival in Jerusalem was with a sufficient show of importance to stir the whole city. That's amazing as well, to think that these were men of high standing. The Magi were also astrologers, so these men were sophisticated people. They were probably some of the smartest people at the time. And to think about that there's people out there who know about knowledge and science and facts about science, but still seek God. And to think about what's going on in society today, we turn away from God and think about our own understandings and our own findings in science, but there is no definitive answer in science to where we came from. With God being so personal, he came down to earth and was able to show himself to us. He was able to live amongst us as a human being and God, which is amazing. And this is why we read the Gospels, to learn about God and his character and the whole Bible in general. But the Gospels are very powerful, which is why they call them the good news. The good news of the gospel, and the gospel is Jesus. All right, let's go ahead and move on. The Magi symbolize the homage of nations to the newborn king, who one day would be worshipped by all nations, which is true. We're getting pretty close. There might be some nations that are still not worshiping him, but he will be worshipped by all nations. One of the objects of their visit, which they themselves did not know, was to supply money for the child's flight to Egypt. The parents were poor, and if it had not been for the gold and other expensive gifts brought by the wise men, escape from Herod might not have been possible. Which, that in itself is amazing. I mean, just thinking about God's timing and how he had his hand in the life of his son, to be able to send these rich wise men with gifts for Jesus to escape Herod. The timing, I mean, all these things had to just line up perfectly. If there was no God, it would just be a coincidence, but that's not how the world works, in my opinion. I believe that God is divine and he's on time and he does things with a purpose for all of us. We don't know God's ways, but his ways are better than our ways. All right, let's continue. The gifts of the Magi can also be interpreted as foreshadowing Jesus' life and death. The gold representing royalty, foretells Jesus as king. The incense, symbolic of the prayers of the high priests rising up to heaven, foretells Jesus as high priest. The myrrh, often used as a burial oil, foretells Jesus' death. The return of the wise men to their own home countries may have paved the way for the later preaching of the gospel. So, God is awesome. Even when Jesus is born, he gets the gifts that are going to represent his lifespan, what's going to happen in his life, the key moments, the life and death and resurrection. It talks about him being high priest, his life, and his death. That's awesome. And also, another point to point out from this is the return of the wise men going to their own homes and paving the way that they saw the Messiah, that they were in the presence of the Lord. And that is probably another key factor that God orchestrated for the opening of people's hearts and minds in where these men were going back to, for these people to get prepared for the gospel that was going to be preached to them in the future after the resurrection of Jesus Christ, after the apostles would be sent out to preach the gospel, the good news. So this was a lot to take in, but it gives you a deep dive into what we just read, and a deeper understanding. And I really like the insight on deeper thinking of breaking down the Bible. At reading it face value, you could just read it and be like, I'm not receiving anything from it. But then you read something like this, and it gets you like your mind just starts rolling, and you start getting more excited and understanding what's going on, the deeper picture. All right, moving on. Matthew chapter 2, verses 13 through 15. This is about the flight to Egypt. Even this incident did not escape God's unfailing eye in the long line of prophecies that looked forward to the Messiah. And there's a example that they'd like us to see, which is in verse 15. So over here on the left in our Bible, and was there until the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the Lord through the prophet, saying, out of Egypt I called my son. So this is talking about the prophecy this is an example of a prophecy in regards to Jesus. Also, they have one in Hosea 11, chapter 11, verse 1. When Israel was a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. Amen. So those two verses that we just read are examples of the prophecies, which there are many, but those are two examples. The angel who directed their flight to Egypt probably was Gabriel, and this is shown in verse 13. Back in our Bible, now when they had departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, arise, take the young child and his mother, flee to Egypt, and stay there until I bring you word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. All right, so as we can see, this was probably Gabriel, who was the angel of the Lord to be direct Joseph on where to go. And God entrusted Gabriel to take care of the infant child. There's another example in Luke chapter 2, verses 8 through 20. Now there were in the same country shepherds living out in the fields, keeping watch over their flock by night. And behold, an angel of the Lord stood before them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were greatly afraid. Then the angel said to them, do not be afraid, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which will be to all people. For there is born to you this day in the city of David a Savior, who is Christ the Lord. And this will be the sign to you. You will find a babe wrapped in swaddling cloths, lying in a manger. And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host praising God and saying, glory to the God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill toward men. So it was when the angels had gone away from them into heaven, that the shepherds said to one another, Let us now go to Bethlehem and see this thing that has come to pass, which the Lord had made known to us. And they came with haste and found Mary and Joseph and the babe lying in a manger. Now when they had seen him, they made widely known the saying which was told them concerning this child. And all those who heard it marveled at those things which were told them by the shepherds. But Mary kept all these things and pondered them in her heart. Then the shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all the things that they had heard and seen, as it was told them. Amen. The stay in Egypt was short, but probably only a year or two, for Herod soon died and it was safe to return. So this is awesome. Even this incident didn't escape God's unfailing eye. That's very true. Even before um, Jesus showed up on the scene, God was in control. But God is always watching over us. He's always directing us where to go. Sometimes it could be this dramatic and sometimes it's not. It's very simple. God is awesome, and having a relationship with him is different for everyone. Let's go ahead and move on to Matthew chapter 2, verses 16 through 18. The children of Bethlehem killed by Herod. It is strange that someone who believed in the coming of Christ, exampled in chapter 2, verses 4, and when he had gathered all the chief priests and the scribes of the people together, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. We are reading that in our Bible. Moving back over to the Bible study. Could have been conceited enough to think he could thwart his coming. So, Herod believed in the beginning about Jesus. He heard about Jesus and he wanted to know more of where he was. But then he decided, I don't want to have a king to worry about in the future. Someone who could contest my reign, my family lineage, who's going to take over my my ruling of Judea or of Israel. But that wasn't the case. Um, Jesus was going to become a king, the king of heaven and earth, but not in the way that they're thinking. He was going to establish his heavenly kingdom, the kingdom that's not of this world. All right, moving on. Matthew chapter 2, verses 19 through 23. Return from Egypt. This, too, was directed by the angel, probably Gabriel. It seems from verse 22 that Joseph was planning to return to Bethlehem in Judea, the ancestral city of David, to make it their permanent home, as the proper place in which to rear the child Messiah. But God planned differently and sent them back to their home in Galilee, in a town called Nazareth. Luke tells us that this was the home of Mary and Joseph before Jesus' birth. And this is shown in Luke chapter 2, verse 4. Going over to our Bible on the left. Joseph also went up from Galilee, out of the city of Nazareth, into Judea, to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and lineage of David. All right, we're going back over here to the Bible study. What Matthew points out especially is that it was in fulfillment of prophecy. He would be called a Nazarene. These exact words are not found in the Old Testament, but probably refer to Old Testament predictions that the prophet would be despised. And this is shown in Psalm 22, verse 6 on our Bible on the left. But I am a worm and no man, a reproach of men and despised by the people. So this is saying that the Bible, this commentary is saying that in Psalm 22, this is showing a prediction of Jesus being despised by the people. And there's another prediction in Isaiah chapter 53, verses 3. Verse 3. He is despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And we hid as it were our faces from him. He was despised and we did not esteem him. So there you go. Another prediction about Jesus being unwanted or just coming from a place that wasn't very acceptable place to live. It was kind of like the ghetto, if you think about it in terms of today. Moving on over here on the Bible study to the right. Another common opinion is that Matthew is referring to Jesus the Nazarene or Jesus the branch, because the Hebrew word for branch is Nesser. The prophecy Matthew refers to here is thought to be Isaiah 11:1. Over here on the left, Isaiah 11:1. There shall come forth a rod from the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. And also in Jeremiah 23:5, there's another prophecy there. On the left, behold, the days are coming, says the Lord, that I will raise to David a branch of righteousness. A king shall reign and prosper, and execute judgment and righteousness in the earth. And there's another one in Zechariah 3:8. Again on the left, hear, O Joshua, the high priest, you and your companions who sit before you, for they are a wondrous sign. For behold, I am bringing forth my servant, the branch. This is where the Messiah is spoken of as the branch in these prophecies that I have just read to you. So, in conclusion, we take a deeper look and we show that God is in control of the life of his son. But not just that, he's in control even before we're born, even before Jesus was born. You know, there's things that God has written and has planned for our life, but he gave us free will. But with Jesus, there was a plan set, and it was all for us. And God was faithful upon his plan and his promise and what he told his prophets to speak. Those things came true, and that's how we know that God is trustworthy. We don't have to be these perfect people to know and be with God. So I thank you for joining me in this Bible study. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave them down in the comments below. Any prayer requests, leave them down in the comments below as well. Please let me know what I can do to improve. Currently, I am sick, but there's no excuse. I want to keep myself accountable, and I want to try to make sure that I do this as best as I can. I'm still learning, and I'm trying my best, but I thank you for watching, and I hope that God continue to bless you, and you continue to seek him and find him, and subscribe, because I'm not only just doing stuff like this, I'm also a gamer, and I'm a husband as well, and a couple other things as well, like a brother and a son. So stay tuned for some more content regarding all that stuff. Thank you for joining me. God bless you.